Now, the Congressional Budget Office is normally pretty rosy in its scenarios, but it tells us that by the year 2020, assuming interest rates stay as low as they are now, which is a big assumption, and assuming that the economy rebounds, even making those assumptions, by 2020, every year, the U.S. government will be paying nearly $1 trillion in interest on the national debt. Yikes. So that's a ceiling that you're coming up against. And yet, meanwhile, and again, I don't want to disillusion people, but the Republican Party pledged to America, pledged to basically keep all the budget-busting things off the table, and then to cut an unspecified $100 billion. $100 billion. This is like saying, I'll give you a coupon for $3 off a trip to the moon. That's the big, bold proposal that we're getting. So folks, we are on our own. There ain't nobody coming to save us. We are on our own. But what's particularly going to hit us is this demographic problem. Between the years 2000 and 2040, what we will have seen is the number of people aged 65 to 84. These are called the young old. The number will have increased by 80%. And the so-called old, this is what demographers say, people who are 85 and older will have increased by 240%. By the year 2050, the number of people in the U.S. who are age 100 and older will have increased by 13 times. Now, it's not that we are upset about this, that, oh my goodness, it's terrible that people are living longer. We're all very happy that people are living longer. That's not the issue. But consider further. In 2040, we will see a big difference from 1940, when in that year, the number of college-age kids in the U.S. was 9.6 million, and the number of people 65 and older was 9 million. So there were more college-age kids. But 2040, we're going to have 20.2 million college kids, 75.2 million people aged 65 and older. And now this is a problem, again, not because we begrudge people longer lives, but simply because of the health costs and promises that have been made. And they are multiplied very greatly at these advanced ages. And provision has simply not been made for this. And in fact, even the Medicare projections already incorporate cost cuts. The Medicare projections for the future already assume that costs are going to somehow come down, without telling us how. So if you're thinking, well, look, we'll bring costs down and that'll get these Medicare projections down, too late. They already brought the projections down before they did anything about the costs. So now we've got a situation where the present value of the unfunded liabilities, that is, the liabilities that are being due to people, the shortfall, we consider all the taxes that will be collected for these purposes, that's already factored in. Over and above that, the present value of these entitlement programs, where it's going to be due, is $111 trillion. You think that's not possible, right? Look, somebody would have told me this, right? That's not possible. But I'm afraid it is. You go to usdebtclock.com, I think it's .com, and they monitor it consistently. So we would have to, if we're going to continue at this pace, we'd have to pretty much change the tax structure. We'd have to change it pretty dramatically. To start funding these things on budget, we'd have to increase income tax rates from the 10% rate, we have to go up to 26. The 25% rate, we have to go up to 66. And the 35% rate, we have to go up to 92%. Now, you think that might have a slightly dampening effect on the economy? So that's what's going on. And so what's going on with the young people? 85% of college seniors are planning to move back in with their parents after they graduate. They don't know what to do. And then they have to deal with the fact that on average they're in debt $23,000. That's because college has become affordable thanks to affordable college government programs. Affordable housing and affordable college tuition means government policies increase the prices of these things through the roof, but then government loans that make you a debt slave the rest of your life come to the rescue, and then you can borrow from the government, and then it becomes affordable. That's affordable for you. We got 7 states where the pension systems are going bust in 2020, another 13 where they're going bust in 2025, and that assumes that the pension systems are getting an 8% return every year. Probably they're not. So it'd be sooner than that. The federal pensions are underfunded by $1 trillion. My favorite, though, was the proposal that was backed by the governor of New York earlier this year. They had to bail out the pension fund. This is a microcosm of America right here. They had to bail out the pension fund. So, in order to bail out the pension fund, they borrowed from the pension fund. Wow, man, that's when you know you are at the end of your rope, man. Yes, that is it. That is it. So, given that situation, maybe there's a political solution. Maybe there'll be wise people who will somehow figure this out and solve it. I mean, I can't rule that out. I mean, crazier things have happened than that. Although I'm actually not sure that crazier things than that have happened. Right? Like UFO landings, I think, would be quite as crazy as that. I mean, I think that's more likely. So who's going to solve this? Who is going to pick up the pieces? Who's going to repair all this wreckage? And the answer is, you and I'll have to do it. Because you peel away the government, and who's behind it? Who's the one? Where do they get all their resources from? They get it all from us. We are ultimately the root of this thing. And they give us the illusion that we can forever keep absorbing other people's resources. We can all live at each other's expense, and this can all work out. But ultimately, when you get right down to it, it's just us. And there isn't going to be any pension fund if they're already borrowing from it now. So we are going to have to figure this out. We're going to be facing a very severe fiscal crisis, and it'll say a lot about who we are as to how we address it. We're going to have to figure out how to care for each other again. Not just callously assuming that some bureaucracy is caring for needy people. We're going to have to do that ourselves. We're going to have to take stock of our own lives and ask ourselves, what talents do I have that I can voluntarily put at the service of my fellow man when a time of great need arises? And likewise, what are my needs that I may need that perhaps somebody else will be able to help me with? We'll need some kind of giant Craigslist to coordinate this, but neighborhoods and communities will have to identify who are their vulnerable people. And through just sheer elbow grease and volunteer work and generosity that comes from the heart, not from the barrel of a gun, that's the only way that we'll get through this. There is no way. You can print all the money you want, but if the resources aren't there on the shelf, it's not going to do anything for you. So I've got some suggestions about some ways of coping with this. That's part of the reason that I was at work on a new book. But basically, what we've seen in the face of this coming catastrophe, we now have an administration that's in power that promised us change we could believe in. But the change, did it change any of what we're just talking about? I mean, is the debt now lower? Are these unfunded entitlements taken care of? Is any of this taken care of? Change we can believe in turned out to be more of the same, except worse. Let's just keep doing more of this, and so on and on. And that's not to say that the Republican Party has a lot of credibility either. It's quite an interesting contest to pit the one against the other. But it all boils down to kick the can down the road. Print, borrow, spend. Never actually address the situation like adults. Well, my friends, it's coming to us. We're going to come face to face to it. And yes, we have been taken advantage of. We have been exploited. A lot of young people's futures have been mortgaged by all the debt that's been racked up by people who care nothing about their welfare. The people who govern us are described as charitably as I can think of, as immature children. In fact, I even hate to say that because my own 7-year-old knows this doesn't work. So I don't really know how to describe it. But in this situation, it's us alone. We have to be the adults. We have to sort this out. We have to come up with some kind of solution when disaster strikes. And the disaster will either be some pain now that will hurt a lot, or it will be a catastrophe in the future. And let us do whatever we can as opinion molders in our own communities to make sure that of these two undesirable scenarios, we pick the better so that our fellow Americans are not in fact subjected to a kind of social calamity we can hardly conceive of. And on that note, have a nice day. Thank you very much.